Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am Christine Dixon of The Ordinary Sacred, and I'm very excited to actually give you a series of videos on my own personal journey with chronic pain and using internal family systems to get to know the parts of me who are causing physical pain for very valid reasons. So I'm going to make a 4-part series on this. In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of my journey, and then I'm going to share a PowerPoint slide of some things that have really helped me. And then in the second, third, and fourth video, I'm going to introduce you personally to some of the parts that I have met along the way. Reen, who is uh, essentially in charge of creating physical pain, has a bunch of parts under her. And then some of the parts that she directed me to go to, some of the roots to help them. One was a 4-year-old part who's stuck in a time of medical trauma. Another one is a 6-year-old part who took on the guilt and the responsibility of my first husband's death for lots of reasons. There's lots of layers to these parts. We'll find out. And another part named Sarge, who essentially believes that or this part is non-binary actually, essentially believes that they have control of everything, and that anything that goes wrong is their fault or their responsibility. And again, the parts are interconnected in lots of different ways. There's layers of cultural burden, legacy burden, personal burden, experience. And it's a really kind of winding up and down path. And so I really wanted to share it with you in pieces because it's a long story. And to be transparent with you, I'm not experiencing actually pain right now, and I'll explain to you why, but I do continue to experience pain. So I'm not completely out of pain, but I'm at a place where I'm not bothered by the pain. The pain is okay with me. It used to be kind of a level 6 to 8, and now it's usually a level 1 to 3. And I didn't want to wait until until I am completely out of pain, because I really want to share the whole journey with you while it's somewhat fresh. And there's so many incredibly rich layers to this. So I really want to start sharing it with you. Okay, so for me, some of you know that more recently, a little bit before Christmas, looking back, I realized it was quite a stressful time for me. Um, I actually, in my inner work, had started to go toward some sexual abuse trauma. I had started to go toward medical trauma. And of course, it was the period right before Christmas, which just has stress built into it. I was dealing with a lot of parts who were feeling rejected by my in-laws, parts mediating conflict between some of our kids. And there was just a lot of stress. This is when this pain on the left side of my head started coming up. Now, I've had this periodically for 15 years. It might show up once and then again in 5 years. And then it started showing up every year as the season would change into summer here, because my system hates summer. Summer is very stressful because it's so hot here in Houston. And so I'd get it every summer until we went on vacation, and then it would go away. And I would go to the dentist. I went to the dentist 4 different times because I was convinced I needed a root canal or something was happening. And every time I would have a panic attack the night before. I couldn't sleep because parts are terrified of the dentist, but I would feel like I have to go because I'm having such pain in the left side of my teeth and jaw. And they would say, no, it must be, ENT issues. So finally, this time, I resisted going to the dentist, and I went to try to have a doctor check out my sinuses, and they said, no, you have no sinus issue. So short of getting a scan to see if I have a brain tumor, which there was a part, it was like, you must have a brain tumor, right? All these parts that are so fearful. Aside from that, seemed to be no structural damage, just this constant pain in my ear, jaw, teeth, and head. And I would notice that the more I fixated on it, the more I was afraid of it, the higher and higher the level of pain would get. And it became, in the mind body world, this loop. It really was happening of the pain sends a danger signal, parts feel afraid of it and fixate on it, which then sends more of a pain danger or danger signal. The pain increases, makes my parts feel even more fearful and panicked and want to fix it, which increases the pain. It's like a spiral into a lot of pain. And I was just so fixated on it. Probably 90% of my waking hours, I was thinking about this pain. I was talking about it incessantly to my husband. And so in the mind body chronic pain world, if you are in that, you might be familiar with the term symptom imperative. So what happens is a lot of times this symptom, and we'll get into why the pain comes, why parts use pain in that way. I mean, it's essentially to distract you from something else. It's kind of like, it reminds me of like a government who's doing some shady things over here that they don't want you to look at. So they go, hey, look over here. And they create this diversion that everybody's fixated on over here. So nobody's looking over here. So often what happens, one of the most common, we'll talk about, there's so many, but is there's some big emotional pain over here that the system doesn't want us to go to. So it creates a diversion with some kind of physical pain. It could be physical pain, it could be panic attacks, OCD, intrusive thoughts, things like that. But the common thing is that we become fixated on it. That's what it's trying to get us to do, right? All of our attention is going to this thing. We're looking over here instead of over here, right? And so this effectively had me do that. And looking back, I realized that I definitely had the symptom imperative where I had debilitating back pain that my system obsessed over and directed my whole day and every activity I could or couldn't do for 2 or 3 months. And then as soon as that was over, I had vaginal pain that lasted for about a month, but my whole system was fixated on what was happening there. What is it? What's wrong? Pain, right? And then as soon as that was done, this came on in my head, right? But it could also be, like I said, it could be anything. It could be back pain, it could be stomach issues, it could be a problem in your mouth, a problem with your bladder, so a lot of people will have diagnoses, right? Like fibromyalgia, which essentially means that you have pain in most of your body, and it just means you have pain in your body and the doctors don't know what it is. That's what they call it. And I remember they call it fibromyalgia. So when I was young, I had growing pains. And I remember someone saying, that's basically you're having regular pain in your legs and your arms, and the doctors don't know what it is. So they just tell you you're having growing pains. And it's not going to hurt you, but it's very real. Mind body pain is not real. I mean, it is, your brain is sending signals to the body to say that it's in pain. You are in pain. And even sometimes it starts with a real structural issue, like maybe you did throw out your back, but then after the 12 weeks of healing, the pain continues because it's learned something and it's saying, I need to have this pain for a certain reason. And so it continues it. Anyway, so sometimes when one thing ends, another thing comes and it just keeps coming, another thing, the symptom imperative, because there just needs to be something to distract you, to fixate your system. And that was definitely true for me. Just one thing after another. So this is just the latest thing, but the blessing of it, honestly, is that it has been so distracting and disturbing to my system that I've been motivated to really get to know the parts behind it, to really use IFS with it. And oh, it's been so incredibly insightful. Now, in the past, I did get to know some parts. For example, I had kind of TMJ, which just meant that I was putting a lot of tension, clenching my jaw. And when I talked to that part, it said, I am holding back the floodgates of panic, of a panicked part. And I said, can I go to that panic part and help them? And then that effectively relieved that issue. Another time I had a really painful abscess. And it was right after I got some really emotionally disturbing news about one of my children. And when I talked to that part, it said, you cannot handle feeling the emotional pain and grief over this situation. So I am distracting you and making you fixate on this physical pain. And once I convinced that part that I could, in fact, go to the emotional pain and be with it, it subsided. So often that is the case. But you'll see in with this pain, there were actually numerous reasons. A desire to punish me, a desire to keep me not experiencing good things for a reason. So you will see that parts can have lots of different reasons, but to them, it makes sense. They really believe they're keeping us safe. So what I want to do in the rest of this video is to go ahead and share my screen. And this was actually, I presented this last week in the IFS practitioner group. Once a month, I have a group of IFS therapists and coaches and people who use IFS with their clients. And someone brought a case study actually of their client who had a back injury. I think it was 6 or more years ago, but continues to be bedridden and in pain, and has to live with their parents. I think even though they're in their 30s. And so they wanted to understand, like, how do I use IFS to help this client? And so this is based on some of my own experience, but I wanted to share it with you also because you can see some of the things that have helped me. So I'm going to start actually with some of the mind-body pain retraining. And again, this is the idea that our pain, especially when we've gone to doctors and we've checked things out and they're saying there is no structural issue or we cannot find anything wrong here. Again, it doesn't mean that you don't have pain. You really do have pain. The good news is that in doing this work, by meeting with the parts who are producing the pain, you can be healed. And to be honest, I'm convinced that even if you have a structural issue, that your mind and body can heal from it using these methods. So one of the first people to ever talk about this was someone named Dr. John Sarno. He coined a term TMS, which technically stands for tension meiosis syndrome, but I don't like the term. I think they've changed it since to the mind-body syndrome. Because again, the pathology, the label doesn't tell you what the root is, like what is actually happening. But he focused on back pain initially. I think back pain, knee pain, things like that. And he was the one that saw that even when people had structural issues in their x-rays, some people with the same, bulging discs, say, would have pain and some people wouldn't. And so he started trying to explore this, and his kind of I'm gonna read just a summary of his take. This is actually from Nicole Sachs. I'm going to talk about her again in a moment. She has a book called The Meaning of Truth, Embrace Your Truth, Create Your Life. But it's really about her method of healing chronic pain. And she worked with and then under Dr. Sarno. And so her summary of Dr. Sarno is that he believed this: regardless of what you have been told is wrong with you, with your body, when you are in pain, you need to realize that you are also really subconsciously angry. Actually, you are enraged. You don't know how angry you are, but your brain does. It is diverting your attention by physiologically enabling pain in your body. To relieve the pain, consider why you might be angry. Do not hide from it. Acknowledge it to yourself. There is no need to tell anyone else. Wait a little while. Don't expect a miracle in the moment. But a little while later, when you attend to your pain, it will be gone. So that's her summary of Dr. Sarno. So he really focused on anger. And I do think that this is very common. There's a certain kind of personality type that usually tends toward mind-body chronic pain and illness, which is a person who has parts who are perfectionists, people-pleasing, kind of taskmaster type parts, a lot of inner critics, things like that. Because people who are compliant with the system, who learn to survive by basically sacrificing and abdicating our own needs, right? So it's kind of like Gabor Mate's book, When the Body Says No, right? It's like all of these protective managing parts have learned that we have to override our bodies in order to please everyone around us in order to survive socially. But eventually, our bodies say no, no, right? Like in the study that they did with IFS with Dick Schwartz, with women who had rheumatoid arthritis. And when they talked to the parts, they said, we are producing a legitimate pain so that others will now take care of you instead of you having to always take care of everyone else, right? It is a very good intention. Every part always has a good protective intention for us. And so a lot of times when we have those parts, people-pleasing perfectionist parts, we learn to suppress our anger. So for many people with chronic pain, the emotion that is not allowed to be felt is anger, because anger is what gives us self-agency. It's what says, this is not okay with me, right? And when we're not allowed to express that, one, it takes a toll on our bodies, but eventually our bodies, and particularly, honestly, for me in perimenopause now, it's like those protective parts that kept me socially in line because they're not supported perhaps by the hormones anymore. They are rendered useless. And now it's as if I cannot say yes to anything that is not authentic or anything that overrides or sacrifices me for the other. And so while it feels like a terrible, awful thing, it's actually your body's way of saying, no, you are doing things out of your capacity, or you are not speaking your truth, right? Or you're not in alignment with your own truth. And I'm trying to bring you back. So it's actually benevolent in that way. Okay, let me move on. And someone in the group on Friday was saying that there's another man, I forgot his name. You can leave it in the comments if you want, who's kind of taken on the torch from Dr. Sarno. He was kind of the early pioneer of this. I also want to refer you to this website, isthistms.com. If you or one of your clients or loved ones is not sure if you have mind-body pain or not, go to isthistms.com. And this is a site created by Dan from the Pain Free You. It's really great. It has a whole list of things. It has a little test you can take. This is one of the pieces. This is actually really helpful because when you check mark all of these things and you go, oh my goodness, this is mind-body pain, that actually helps sometimes people just read the list and realize it's mind, body, pain, and the pain goes away immediately. That not everybody has that happen. But it's like you realize, oh yeah, it's been switching from this to this. Oh yeah, it moves around. Oh yeah, when I'm having fun doing something I love, it goes away. Or I took this placebo or this antibiotic and the pain went away within minutes, right? You take a pain med and the pain goes away within minutes. It wasn't the pain med. It was the belief that the pain med was going to help you. So again, it's a mind, our minds are so powerful. So yeah, go to isthistms.com to just gain some evidence. Another book that was so helpful to me that I want to highly recommend is called The Way Out, Healing, a Revolutionary Scientifically Proven Approach to Healing Chronic Pain by Alan Gordon and Alon Ziv. And this is it's such an easy read and so incredibly powerful. He teaches about somatic tracking, which is something that we also do in IFS, where we observe where the pain is, with curiosity. We send messages of safety to the pain, and highly recommend that book. And then finally here, Nicole Sachs, who I mentioned, who wrote this book. The main thing that Nicole Sachs has contributed is something called journal speak. And this is basically, from an IFS perspective, this is where we set aside time every day. She recommends 20 minutes. And we basically let our parts have free rein to express themselves. Often parts who may have been exiled or suppressed, parts who are have things that other parts consider shameful, like rage and anger. I hate this person. I really don't want to do that. I'm so angry at them. Or I have this impulse to do this thing that is seen as aberrant or taboo or shameful in some way. And so we write for 20 minutes. And then if you're physically writing, you can burn it, you can rip it up, you can type it and delete it. It's for you. It's so that those parts feel heard. And then she recommends that for 10 minutes, we do a self-compassion practice, which is essentially now our wise and loving inner self, inner parent, is now giving love and acceptance to all of these parts. So it's the same thing as IFS. It's all parts are welcome. And in those parts that hold painful or shameful emotions, what Jung would call our shadow, or in IFS, what we call our exiles, our inner children, when they feel fully heard and seen and loved and accepted, then these other parts that think they need to distract us from them with pain or in other ways, they can naturally relax. They don't have to do that job anymore. So it's really powerful. You can even just Google journal speak Nicole Sachs, and it'll tell you how to do it. Make these 3 lists, and then you each day pick a topic and write about it. So that's been really helpful to me. In some of the future videos on this, I will share more detail about that. Okay, so now I want to just specifically talk to you about IFS and what it looks like to work with the parts who are causing physical pain. And all these things above, they're very compatible with IFS, particularly Nicole Sachs' work, because she does inner child work and this somatic tracking and giving voice to these exiled parts and bringing self-compassion in. She's got kind of all the pieces there. So in my experience with myself and with clients, the first step is to find and befriend all the parts who are responding to the pain, right? It's really these parts that become fixated on the pain. And they might fear it, they might hate it, And even though the parts that hate it, they're fixated on it. That's all they can think about. So, um, they say the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference, right? Like there's still all their attention is on the pain, even though they hate it. They're analyzing it, trying to fix it, desperately Googling, seeking answers. Again, it's like you imagine there's the pain or the parts causing the pain, and then there's this crowd of parts that is just all around it, having reaction to it. And those are the parts that we need to get to know first, because it's important for them to trust ourself enough to relax a little bit and make space and give us permission to go to the one or the ones causing the pain. I know for me, and you'll see in the coming videos, it took with this pain in the left side of my head, it took about 3 weeks for me to really meet with these parts before they could relax enough to trust me to go to the one producing the pain, because they were like, we hate her. We hate her so much. We just want her to go away. We cannot relax, because they perceive that they're fighting that part. Essentially, we are trying to get her to go away. We're trying to figure her out. We're trying to find the problem. So as the self, I'm proposing a different strategy. I'm saying, I see you. I see your good intention. I get it. I get why you want her to go away. You just so badly don't want to be in pain anymore. But what if I could try? I know you've tried and tried and tried, and it's not helping. You're feeling despair. You're feeling defeated. What if I tried something different? What if I tried to get to know the one causing the pain, to see why? So, because if you're blended with me, that part will not open up to me. And that was my experience. The one causing the pain was like, I don't care. I'm not going to tell you anything, because I was blended with parts who hated her. But once they gave me space, she started telling me all kinds of things. And then I gained insight about what she was protecting so that I could go to it and help it. And that's was effective, right? But sometimes the parts around it, you can just propose an experiment. Just let me go and listen to her and see what she says and see if that's helpful or not. So gaining the trust of all those parts around the pain or the parts causing the pain first is really key. Okay, so then step 2 is what I was talking about, approaching the one or ones causing the pain with openness and curiosity, to hear their message, to hear why they're doing this, why it makes sense to them, how they're trying to help you, and for them to usher you into what they protect so that you can go and help them and give them what they need, because that's really the root. And if you find, that you cannot go toward the pain or the one causing the pain with genuine openness and curiosity, it just means you're blended with other parts and you need to gain their trust first. You need to really validate their concerns and propose experiments and things like that. What if I just go, for 10 seconds? And I also want to point out some common reasons that parts give to why they're producing physical pain. One is to distract from emotional pain. That's probably one of the biggest ones. Again, Dr. Sarno recognized this, but in my experience, it wasn't just anger. It was, I am distracting you from intense panic. I'm distracting you from grief. I'm distracting you from the shame and guilt. Balloons for shame and guilt. And then another reason sometimes parts give is to punish. I am punishing you with physical pain, because how many of us learned that when we did something wrong, we deserve corporal punishment, right? We deserve physical pain. And another reason is I'm alerting you to needs, right? I'm alerting you to the fact that this thing in front of you is stressful. Don't go there. this person, this place, this topic, this thought is stressful. I'm going to give you pain every time you go in the direction that is not meant for you. And it's very benevolent. Or, there's a need that other parts of you are overriding. And so I've got to scream at you now to let you know, you know. Other times it's actually exiled parts who experience deep pain and trauma, and they want to express their anguish, and they haven't been able to get your attention any other way. So they're screaming at you physically. So that could be a reason. And another big one is to get love, attention, or help from people outside of you. Maybe as a child, when you had a physical ailment, it was the only time that your parent gave you any kind of affection or attention. Or maybe it was the only time that your parents stopped fighting, right? So these parts learn, oh, when I'm in physical pain or I have physical illness, I get attention, I get care, I get my needs met, I get a connection, attunement, right? And so it begins to like equate those two, and it might need to be updated. Now, just a quick little note that when we were doing the case study, realizing that this young adult person who was the client was still in their parents' home. And so this, again, you always, I'm giving these common reasons that parts give. The way to know is to go in directly and ask the part, and the part, if other parts that hate it and fear it are giving space and you are genuinely open, the part will tell you directly why it is doing what it's doing. You'll see that in the my examples going forward. But it, like any part, it cannot stop doing this job until what it protects is healed or helped, right? So in the case of my this practitioner's client, they were still in the scenario that would cause them to need to have the pain, to get attention from parents, to protect the parents from hurting each other, like those kinds of things. So if the reason for the part causing the pain is still there, we cannot ask it to relax. We cannot say, can you please just stop causing the pain? And so there's a whole layer of things that might need to happen. And I was just telling this person, this practitioner, that in that case, when a person is still in an environment of, abuse, or where these parts are trying to keep them safe and they're still in that, it's not like you can update them and say, hey, you're not in that environment anymore. You don't need to do this anymore. They're still in it. They still have a reason to do it. So really, the best course of action is just to appreciate it, to say, wow, I understand how you perceive that you're helping me here. And I appreciate you. And how can we, get the whole system on board, meet the concerns of other parts, to bring ourselves out of the situation that demands this physical pain be here, right? And that can take some time to befriend all the parts. But once they are on board, there can be a self-led decision to get everything in place to leave the environment that requires the physical pain. So again, parts will cause distraction until they trust that we can have the capacity to really be with the parts that experience emotional anguish, or until the need is met, or until they trust that we will have external help without the pain or illness presenting, right? We have to deal with the root issue of why the part is producing the pain. Sometimes that means getting out of a certain environment, or creating distance in a certain relationship, or working with a people-pleasing part that sacrifices our own needs and helping that part be able to relax enough so that the pain part knows that we are going to honor our authenticity and our needs. And then once those concerns are met, they don't have to produce the pain anymore. They don't have a reason to anymore. And then they can take on other roles and their naturally valuable qualities. So thank you so much for listening to this so far. Next time in part 2, I'm going to introduce you to my beautiful part, Reen. I'm going to explain how I finally was able to get information from her. She's the one in charge of causing physical pain in my body and has many parts under her. So I look forward to introducing you to her next time. If you have anything to add, any comments or any questions about working with parts who cause pain, physical pain, chronic pain, illness through IFS, please leave them in the comments below.